Bug is about the emergence of one particular antibiotic-resistant organism, MRSA or MRSA. And the point of the book was to tell a story about the international epidemic of antibiotic resistance through the lens of this one organism. The story of MRSA had not really been told in one place, and it starts in 1961 and moves to the present day. So in the book, I spoke to about 200 people, about 100 researchers and clinicians, and about 100 victims or family members of victims. I reviewed about 1,100 medical papers and about 200 news accounts over about 60 or 70 years. So there was a lot of stuff to keep track of. And the things I feel I should say up front are first that I know myself to be very linear oriented. So making lots of lists works for me, and I'm very text oriented as opposed to, I don't mind map, I don't draw diagrams. So your mileage may vary. I think the most important thing for finding an organizational scheme and workflow is to do something that works well with whatever your intellectual metabolism and learning style happen to be. Because this is all now about 2 years old, I'm sure there are newer tools than what I'm going to show you. My other thing is that I don't trust the cloud. Even though I spend a lot of time on the road and I want to have my stuff with me all the time, I always want my things to be resident somewhere in some hard drive that I own and not be relying on storage in the cloud, because there's going to be a day when you are on deadline with something or you need to finish a chapter and that cloud is not going to be accessible. So my organizational scheme relies on a couple of different programs. The first thing I do in organizing stuff is to make sure, as I say, that I have a hard copy of it. I devise a unique naming scheme that works for me, that allows me to see where it came from, what the rough date was, who the main author is, or who the person quoted is. I have folders on my hard drive, but then I did two things. The first is that I made a master index for myself of every single piece of information that I had. And I organized that master index through this program on the Outliner. This is, I think, a Mac-only program. It's a very flexible outlining program that you could also use for mind mapping. A lot of people do that. I don't particularly. So my notes up here, I promise I'm not Facebooking, even though this is the only crowd in which Facebooking during a presentation would probably be okay. I started out by organizing everything by sort of the rough, kind of the rough major topics of the book. If I blow this up for you, this is what my actual index looks like. If you printed it out, it would be at least 40 pages. And in it, for every topic and subtopic, there are, in red, notes to myself of things that I need. In green, interviews that are relevant to the topic. In blue, scientific articles. I honestly don't remember at this point if I had a different color for news articles. I don't think so. That only told me what it was that I had. It doesn't tell me anything about what's in them. So for that, I use this program that David mentioned called DevonThink. DevonThink is a optical character recognition database. It accepts pretty much any form of document, a text document, a PDF. I think it now searches images as well. I would have to double check that. And what it shows you, so these are, again, are all on the left, are all topic headings.
That's a Mac only, right?
I believe DevonThink is Mac only. So here's a set, some information I have about papers about colonization of staph on the skin. It shows me the text of the paper. If I want to know what I've got related to a particular topic, let's say hand washing in hospitals, it shows me anything for which it sorts by hand washing by first by title and then by content. And you can see over here, if you can see the cursor, that it scores the hits as to what is most and least relevant to what I've just asked it. And then you can go into, if I wanted to see where in this paper hand washing appeared, it'll show me my search term. So it's really useful as you have, once you start piling up a large number of materials, for reminding yourself what's there. You don't actually need to remember everything that's in the left-hand column, because the search function will show you. It's effectively like Spotlight in a Mac. There's another thing that this does that's very cool that David may be able to talk about in more detail. Is this it? Keywords? No, see also. Okay. See also, the magic hat. It will tell you anything else that you should look for. It recognizes essentially major keywords and tags, even if you have not keyworded or tagged things, and searches in your database for other things that might be useful. There are some people who use that function for taking individual notes, chunks of PDFs or notes to themselves, or just plain text notes. And apparently it's incredibly useful for that, and next time around I plan to use it. The one other thing I did for organizing stuff, one other program that I'll show you, is that because I was describing an epidemic that was happening in real time, it was important to me to figure out what was happening to my bug, essentially, while I was writing the book. So I set up a Google alert for myself about MRSA as soon as I started work on the book. And every day there were a couple of news stories or new papers published. I wanted at the end, when I was going out talking about the book and marketing it, to be able to say to people, in the time that I was working on this, there were X outbreaks here and there, or you, TV reporter who might want to write about my book, might want to do a segment about my book, in your city there were 3 outbreaks in the past 2 years. So what I did with all those Google alerts to individual news stories was I put them into a spreadsheet-like program called FileMaker Pro. And this is what my spreadsheet looks like. It goes on for very, very many pages. All of these are, where and when and to whom and how many people were affected, and brief narratives and so forth. And the reason why I used FileMaker Pro and why I recommend it for anybody who's doing anything chronological is that you, unlike Excel, you can set it up so that it's effectively like index cards. So every time you go into this database, you fill out something that you have designed that is just like an index card. But then you can report it all out as a searchable spreadsheet. You can sort this a whole bunch of different ways. A little bit more about how I got from these places where I'm stashing information into actual writing pieces of the book. I used this outlining program both to sort of map for myself where the major narratives in the book are. This is, I abandoned this halfway through once I knew what I was doing, but these are my chapters. And if I blow this up, I have notes to myself about this is what the major story strands and the major pieces of factual information are going to be in each chapter, and the red is notes to myself about what I still need to do. And then taking a combination of the DevonThink and taking a combination of DevonThink, what's in DevonThink, and my first initial index of materials, I started figuring out what I had that was good for each chapter. So I do a parallel set of things for each chapter. One is sort of fodder, which is my file of everything that might be useful, all in one place, essentially in list form, because lists is how I think. This is the fodder for the first chapter, which is actually posted on the web, so if anyone was as obsessional as me, you could actually compare them. Oops. This here, this is what fodder looks like. It's quotes from every paper I could find with the source noted. The date of the interview, the date of the paper, this is all from interviews.
A quick question, Mary. The fodder, is that essentially a filtered, selected?
Yeah, that's a good way to put it. So I've gone through every piece of material that I think might be relevant to the chapter and stashed pieces of it in this one document, which I then either read on the screen and keep on the screen as I'm writing, or print out and actually read over and over again. I do not pretend that this is the most efficient way to do it. This just happens to be the way it works for me. And from this, all of this stuff, then the second filter for me was actually setting up an outline for the chapter. And what you're looking at over here on the right-hand side of the screen is the outline for chapter 1. And those major headings are essentially scenes within the chapter, which are the two narrative strands and a sort of didactic strand interchanging. A story that takes place in 2007, and then a story that takes place in 1996, and both of those stories moving forward on different timescales to end up in the same place at the end of the chapter. When I blow this up, there's all the stuff from my fodder file that is relevant to those different narrative strands. So what would I do differently? I'm thinking about using, one other thing I should point out for anybody who's an academic or has an academic affiliation in the audience is that there are probably tools available to you through your universities that may make more sense than anything that I'm showing you, but I'm an independent, so I don't have a university affiliation, I don't have a university IT department or a library connection or anything like that. So as a result, what I'm using are stuff I'm just using stuff off the rack. But I know, I worked for a while at University of Minnesota, and there were certain programs that they made available to people that might well have been useful to me at the time that I was already working on this, along this track instead. The one thing I would do differently, I think, is that now, particularly for blogging, I'm making more use of Evernote, which despite everything I said about the cloud, is cloud-based. The great thing about Evernote is that you can pull things into it really quickly, and it also searches images. So I use Evernote as kind of like a reminder notebook for myself of things that I might want to work on, because it's so low stress getting things into it, and it's very quickly accessible if the cloud is up. And I think I might look at Scrivener next time around, because Scrivener sounds interesting. That's me. Thanks.